The White House is ready for Thanksgiving. The presidential ketchup boat is filled to the brim and ready to go. This morning on the freshly paved over Rose Garden, our commander-in-chief presided over an important American tradition, the annual pardon of the turkeys, which at this point are the only thing Trump hasn't pardoned this year. These are the birds that were spared. Their names are Gobble and Waddle, which is what Trump does every night at dinner.
The laughter started before the audience understood how serious the night would become. Jimmy Kimmel walked onto the stage during what should have been one of the lightest weeks in American politics, the Thanksgiving stretch, when presidents usually smile, pardon a turkey, make a few harmless jokes, and let the country breathe for a moment. But the segment framed this year's scene very differently. Instead of calm leadership and holiday warmth, the clip made it look like Donald Trump had turned a simple turkey pardon into another stage for anger, insults, and political revenge. And before the audience could even finish laughing, Kimmel shifted to something far darker. He began with the bird, not because the bird mattered most, but because the image was too strange to ignore. A president standing in front of cameras, surrounded by tradition, speaking to a turkey while dragging political enemies into the moment.
Most presidents at the turkey pardon keep it light. They make a few bad puns, they wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and they go back to work. But that's not Donald Trump. Donald Trump used the opportunity to brag about all the wars he's ending, how low his imaginary prices are now, and out of nowhere took shots at the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois.
The mayor was a low IQ person. The mayor is incompetent, and the governor is a big fat slob.
Kimmel let the audience laugh at the absurdity, the ceremony, the feathers, the serious face, the old grudges spilling into a holiday ritual. But underneath the joke was a sharper point. If a leader cannot set aside anger even for a ceremonial pardon, what does that say about the state of the country? Kimmel reminded viewers that the turkey pardon is supposed to be harmless, one of those rare American traditions where politics pauses for a few minutes, and the president acts as though the entire country still belongs in one room. But the clip suggested something else, a man so consumed by grievance that even a turkey became part of the performance. Once Kimmel said that aloud, the audience understood the joke was never really about poultry. It was about power that could not stop attacking.
One of the Democrats Trump's going after is Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. The Pentagon is threatening to investigate and even court-martial him for this video. Mark Kelly was a captain in the Navy. He flew 39 combat missions over Iraq and Kuwait. He's a former astronaut, which, I mean, if Trump starts going after our astronauts, who's next? Lauren Sanchez, Katy Perry? Where does it end?
Then the tone changed. Kimmel lowered his voice and pointed towards something more serious happening behind the holiday spectacle. The segment raised the question of Pete Hegseth and a reported threat involving Senator Mark Kelly. Kimmel framed it less like a punchline and more like a warning. Mark Kelly was not just another politician. He was a Navy veteran, a combat pilot, and an astronaut whose public image had long been tied to service and duty. The idea that someone like Kelly could face threats for reminding military members about their constitutional oath gave the room a different kind of silence. Kimmel emphasized one point again and again: the military does not swear loyalty to one man. It swears loyalty to the Constitution. That line landed heavily because it sounded like something that once would have been obvious. The segment argued that criticism inside modern politics was increasingly treated not as disagreement, but as betrayal. Veterans and public servants who spoke about constitutional duty were painted as enemies simply for refusing blind loyalty. Kimmel never needed to shout. The contrast carried the monologue on its own. On one side was a president ranting during a turkey pardon. On the other was a decorated veteran facing threats tied to defending constitutional principles. Absurdity and danger were sitting side by side, and Kimmel kept forcing the audience to look at both at the same time. Then the monologue swerved again into another controversy involving Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and reported personal messages that Kimmel described as bizarre and deeply uncomfortable. The audience laughed because the material sounded almost impossible to parody. But even there, the point stretched beyond embarrassment. Kimmel was painting a larger picture of a political culture where serious offices and major national responsibilities had become surrounded by chaos, spectacle, and behavior that once would have destroyed careers. By this point, the monologue no longer felt like a collection of jokes. It felt like a portrait of a country drifting away from normal political behavior. A holiday tradition turned into a grievance rally, a decorated senator linked to threats for defending constitutional duty, public figures trapped in scandals strange enough to overshadow actual policy. Kimmel's argument was that none of these moments existed separately. Together, they formed an atmosphere where outrage, spectacle, and loyalty tests had replaced stability and seriousness. What gave the segment its force was the way Kimmel slowed everything down. He did not allow the audience to laugh and immediately move on. He made viewers sit with the pattern. Comedy, in that moment, became less about escape hype and more about exposure. Sometimes jokes soften reality, but sometimes they reveal it more clearly than official speeches ever can. And on this night, the message was simple: when leadership becomes grievance, when service becomes suspect, and when public office becomes a stage for personal chaos, people have a right to feel alarmed. The applause at the end mattered less than the silence that came before it. Americans can laugh at a president arguing with a turkey. They can laugh at awkward scandals and bizarre headlines, but they also recognize the line between comedy and collapse. And when a war hero can be threatened for defending the Constitution while powerful figures hide behind spectacle and insults, the joke stops being funny. It becomes a warning.